Imagine this. A relatively unknown biotech company tucked away in southern China quietly develops a cancer drug that, in rigorous clinical trials, manages to outperform the global bestseller. A medicine that brings in nearly $30 billion each year and is prescribed in over 100 countries. Suddenly, the news rockets across the world's financial centers. Overnight, this once obscure company becomes the talk of Wall Street, a buzzword in the corridors of global pharma, and a symbol of China's scientific ambitions. But this isn't only a story about massive profits or a singular medical breakthrough. It's about a tectonic shift in the global balance of power, one that could fundamentally rewrite the rules about who will lead the future of medicine, innovation, and, ultimately, human health. To understand exactly how we arrived at this turning point, let's rewind the clock a couple of decades. For much of recent history, China was seen as the pharmaceutical world's diligent imitator. Major medical innovations would emerge in the United States or Europe, often after years of research and development, billions in investment, and the brightest minds collaborating across borders. By the time these groundbreaking therapies reached Chinese patients, it wasn't unusual for 8, 9, or even 10 years to have slipped by. During that lag, Chinese companies primarily focused on creating generic copies of Western drugs, rather than pioneering new cures themselves. Michelle Xia, a forward-thinking scientist, experienced this reality firsthand. After earning her doctorate in molecular biology and microbiology in the United Kingdom, she spent over a dozen years in American biotech, working for companies like Celera Genomics and Bayer. She witnessed, up close, how quickly American patients could access the latest treatments, while her own country lagged behind, not for lack of talent, but for lack of resources, vision, and the right incentives. Driven by an ambition to change this status quo, Michelle Xia made a bold decision. She left behind her career in the United States, returned home, and in the year 2012, co-founded her own biotech startup, Akeso, in the city of Zhongshan, located in southern China, well away from Beijing's political power and Shanghai's financial might. The company's name, inspired by the ancient Greek goddess of healing, reflected their mission to become a source of true medical innovation. With only $3 million in initial investment, a fraction of what Western startups typically raise, Xia and her small team got to work. They were undeterred by the odds. As Robert Booth, a veteran executive from Roche and a board member at Summit Therapeutics, later remarked, Michelle wasn't afraid to try what others ignored. She is confident in her own scientific judgment. Booth had seen Xia's relentless curiosity years earlier, noting how, even as a junior scientist, she would ask the toughest questions in meetings and master complex laboratory techniques in record time. What set Akeso apart was not just its determination, but its refusal to play it safe. Instead of merely following the crowd, Akeso's scientists decided to pursue a strategy that many in big pharma had dismissed as too risky or too complex, combining two powerful cancer-fighting mechanisms into a single, novel drug. Their innovation, ivonescimab, merges the ability to stimulate a patient's immune system to attack cancer cells with the capability to choke off the tumor's blood supply, essentially starving the cancer. This dual-action approach was largely ignored by established giants, but Xia's team saw its potential. Fast forward to last year. In a pivotal clinical trial, the gold standard for testing new medicines, Akeso's ivonescimab was put head-to-head against Merck's Keytruda, a drug that has become a household name in oncology, with annual sales nearing $30 billion. The result? Akeso's drug didn't just hold its own, it outperformed Keytruda. Patients receiving ivonescimab experienced cancer progression at less than half the rate of those treated with the Merck product. To put this into perspective, median progression-free survival for Akeso's drug was over 11 months, while for Keytruda, it was under 6 months. Professor Kai-Kun Zhao of Shanghai Pulmonary Hospital, one of China's leading experts, declared, "The clinically meaningful outcomes of ivonescimab affirm its immense potential as a cornerstone treatment in cancer immunotherapy." The global reaction was immediate and dramatic. Akeso's stock price soared, nearly tripling over the course of a single year. Michelle Xia, once a junior scientist in Kentucky, found herself not just at the helm of a world-renowned company, but now counted among the world's self-made healthcare billionaires. Pharmaceutical giants from North America and Europe began knocking on Akeso's door, eager to form partnerships, license drugs, and tap into China's fast-evolving biopharma ecosystem. According to Deal Pharma, nearly 1 in every 3 drug candidates licensed by major global pharmaceutical firms last year originated from Chinese companies, a staggering leap from virtually none only 6 years earlier. But as with any revolution, the path forward is complex and filled with obstacles. With its breakthrough, Akeso has placed China at the very center of a new biopharmaceutical revolution. Today, China leads the world in the annual volume of clinical trials, especially in advanced areas like cell therapies, gene editing, and RNA-based treatments. China's own oncology drug market is expected to reach nearly $23 billion by the year 2025, a figure that would have seemed unimaginable just a decade ago. The government's ambitious Made in China 2025 initiative places biopharmaceutical innovation at the heart of national strategy, signaling Beijing's intent to transform China into a global leader in life sciences. Not surprisingly, this dramatic rise has caught the attention and concern of Western analysts, investors, and lawmakers. The United States National Security Commission on Emerging Biotechnology has issued warnings that American leadership in biotech is at risk. Their recommendation? An unprecedented $15 billion investment over 5 years, aimed at safeguarding American dominance in biomedical research and manufacturing. Industry experts, like Stifel analyst Bradley Canino, warn that drugs like ivonescimab could massively expand the reach of cancer immunotherapy, making these therapies available to more patients and for a wider array of cancers than ever before. The stakes could not be higher. Yet the question remains, can Akeso, and by extension China's broader biotech sector, sustain this momentum? There are significant hurdles ahead. For one, regulatory approval in Western markets is no small feat. The United States and European Union demand years of comprehensive safety and efficacy data, and Chinese companies often face skepticism regarding data transparency and intellectual property practices. Legal disputes remain a risk, with Western competitors keen to protect their own patents and market share. Furthermore, the competitive landscape is heating up. The field of bispecific antibodies, where ivonescimab operates, is now on the radar of every major pharmaceutical company. Piper Sandler analysts emphasize that the PD-1 and VEGF inhibitor arena is undoubtedly competitive and clearly on the radar of the big caps. In other words, Akeso is now playing on the world's biggest stage, against some of the wealthiest and most experienced competitors on the planet. There's also a looming issue of affordability. While Akeso and its Chinese peers may be able to manufacture drugs more cost-effectively, questions remain about whether they can deliver life-saving therapies at prices that Western health systems and patients can bear. This challenge is not trivial. The cost of new cancer drugs has soared globally, putting strain on public healthcare budgets and raising fears about access and equity. If Akeso can succeed in this area, it could shake up not just the science, but also the economics of global healthcare. Despite these obstacles, the potential upside is enormous. Success stories like Akeso's are sparking a wave of new cross-border collaborations. For instance, Akeso has partnered with Summit Therapeutics and global powerhouse Pfizer to advance combination immunotherapies that could set new standards in cancer treatment. These alliances reflect a growing trend. As Chinese innovation advances, Western companies are increasingly eager to collaborate, recognizing that scientific breakthroughs can come from anywhere. Moreover, Akeso is not standing still. As of July of the year 2025, the company has expanded its drug development pipeline to include treatments for autoimmune diseases such as psoriasis and metabolic disorders like high cholesterol. Its market capitalization now stands near $13 billion, a staggering achievement for a company that didn't even exist at the turn of the millennium. Zooming out, China's entire pharmaceutical sector is in the midst of a transformation. The country now conducts more annual clinical trials than the United States, particularly in the most advanced domains like gene editing and RNA therapies. Companies such as Jiangsu Hengrui have also achieved regulatory approval for innovative cancer drugs, while industry giants like Sino Biopharm have made billion-dollar acquisitions to expand their capabilities. The global oncology drug market itself is expected to reach over $441 billion by the year 2029, with China claiming an ever larger share. These shifts are not occurring in isolation. They are part of a broader, global trend where scientific talent, capital, and ideas flow across borders at an unprecedented pace. Many of China's biotech leaders, like Michelle Xia, gained their scientific training in the West before returning home to build new ventures. This flow of expertise, sometimes called brain circulation, has supercharged China's capacity for innovation. In fact, over the past 5 years, Experts like Roel van den Akker of PwC have gone so far as to call China a central pillar of global biopharma innovation. What does all this mean for patients, investors, and everyday people around the world? For patients, especially those battling cancer, the implications are profound. New drugs and therapies that once seemed out of reach are now coming to market faster than ever, offering hope to millions. Imagine a world where the wait for cutting-edge treatments is measured in months, not years, where a diagnosis in Shanghai or Sao Paulo doesn't mean waiting nearly a decade for the latest cure. Akeso's ivonescimab is already being trialed in countries beyond China, and if approved in the United States and Europe, could become a standard of care for lung cancer worldwide. For investors, the message is equally clear. The era of Western dominance in biotech is over. Early adopters who recognize these global shifts could see enormous rewards. But with those rewards come heightened volatility. The field is fiercely competitive, the science is incredibly complex, and regulatory hurdles remain formidable. Yet, as the lines between Chinese and Western biotech blur, those willing to embrace new partnerships and global perspectives stand to benefit the most. For policymakers, these developments represent both an opportunity and a challenge. On the one hand, increased competition can drive down drug prices, improve access, and accelerate the pace of innovation. On the other, questions about data integrity, intellectual property, and national security are more pressing than ever. We may see new trade agreements, regulatory reforms, and even government-backed investment funds emerge in response to this shifting landscape. It's also worth noting the broader societal impact. Stories like Michelle Xia's, of a scientist who navigated multiple cultures, overcame obstacles, and built a world-class company from the ground up, are powerful reminders of what's possible when talent is allowed to flourish. Her journey, from a small town in Gansu province to the labs of Kentucky, and finally to the boardrooms of a billion-dollar company, illustrates how innovation thrives in a world where borders are more porous and ideas are shared freely. But what about the future? What can we expect over the next decade as China's biotech sector matures? First, we are likely to see a surge in strategic collaborations between Chinese and Western firms. Summit Therapeutics, for example, has already licensed ivonescimab from Akeso for key markets including the United States, Canada, Europe, and Japan. The upcoming Harmony-7 trial, set to begin in early 2025, will compare ivonescimab monotherapy directly against pembrolizumab monotherapy in non-small cell lung cancer, further validating Akeso's global ambitions. Second, the market for bispecific antibodies, a category of drugs that can target two disease pathways at once, is on track to explode. Analysts believe these therapies could become the backbone of future cancer care. As more data emerges, and as companies like Akeso demonstrate success in large-scale trials, we may see a wave of new therapies that surpass the efficacy of today's blockbusters. Third, consolidation within China's pharmaceutical sector is likely. As competition intensifies, only the most innovative and well-capitalized firms will survive. Industry observers point to recent megadeals, such as Sino Biopharm's acquisition of Lenovo Medicines for nearly $1 billion, as evidence of a maturing market. However, risks remain. Regulatory environments outside China are notoriously tough to navigate. The United States Food and Drug Administration, for instance, demands not only gold-standard clinical data, but also rigorous proof of manufacturing quality, transparency in reporting, and unwavering adherence to intellectual property law. Any missteps could delay or derail global expansion. There are also cultural and business differences to reckon with. Western firms often emphasize incremental advances and risk mitigation, while Chinese companies, emboldened by government support and a massive domestic market, are more willing to bet big on transformative innovations. Finding common ground will be crucial for successful partnerships. The pricing debate is another unresolved issue. As healthcare costs spiral upward worldwide, the pressure is on for new entrants like Akeso to offer high-impact medicines at affordable prices. If they succeed, it could set a precedent, forcing even the largest Western firms to rethink their pricing models and making life-saving drugs accessible to far more people. Beyond cancer, Akeso's ambitions are vast. The company's current pipeline includes more than 20 innovative drugs under development, many of which target diseases that Western pharmaceutical giants have largely neglected, either for commercial or logistical reasons. This not only broadens the company's impact, but also signals a willingness to tackle some of the world's most persistent health challenges, from autoimmune conditions to metabolic disorders. For viewers at home, All of these developments mean that the landscape of medicine and global healthcare is changing at a pace never seen before. If you or someone you care about has been affected by cancer or any serious illness, the next generation of treatments may come from places and companies you've never heard of. In just the next few years, patients could gain access to therapies that, until recently, would have been considered science fiction. And thanks to intensifying competition, prices could come down, making these advances available to millions more people. And finally, there is a deeper lesson here about the power of global cooperation and the sharing of knowledge. Michelle Xia's personal journey, from a small town in northwest China to the laboratories of America and back again, shows that when the world's best minds work together, the results can benefit everyone. As cross-border partnerships deepen, and as scientific ideas circulate more freely than ever before, the possibilities for medical progress are truly limitless. Here's a final secret for you. While Akeso's ivonescimab makes headlines for cancer, the company's research pipeline contains more than 20 additional innovative drugs, several targeting illnesses that have long been neglected by Western pharma. The ripple effect of this new competition could redefine what's possible in medicine over